Hello there, and welcome back to Writing from Scratch with me, Tom. On today's video, we're continuing our series looking at character development by exploring motivations. A motivation for your character is one of the most important and interesting parts of character creation and story development. A motivation is what makes us interested in the journey that our character is going on, no matter how big or small it is. A motivation is what sucks us in and makes us want to continue that journey all the way to the end to see it succeed or fail. A motivation is what makes us root for our favourite characters and what makes us hate our worst characters. Just like in real life, every character and person needs a motivation for the things that they do. Imagine for a moment a book full of characters where they're just ambling around with no goals or motivations. They have nothing that they want, nothing that they need, nothing that they're going to do in the future, no reason for doing anything, and no ambitions for the future. And that's not a story. There's nothing there. And that's because we understand as people that we live in a world that is dominated by different motivations. Motivations that interact with one another, that clash and that challenge each other, that sometimes align and sometimes go against one another. Motivations are a really key part of creating interesting characters. It's something that we look for in real people, and it's something that our characters need to have in every story that we tell. And that also means that every character needs to have a motivation. Even if you don't express that, you need to understand when you're planning that all of your characters have to have a reason and a goal for doing things within your story. Like we discussed in our non-perfect character video, we as an audience want to see characters represented on screen that we can see part of ourselves within. We want to see that the people that we root for get the successful end that they deserved, and that the people we are rooting against don't achieve their motivations. We need this. It's part of the human nature to cling to things that inspire us to create our own goals and achieve our own motivations. Ultimately, a character without motivation doesn't provide this and seriously diminishes the story that you're trying to tell. We should also outline what it is exactly we mean when we use the word motivation. And really, this can be split down into two different elements: the goals and the reasons. The goals are obviously the end point of a character's journey, what it is that they're aiming for. These can be wants or needs. These can change over time. They can be long-term and short-term. For example, Frodo's goals within The Lord of the Rings change multiple times. To begin with, it's just to hide the ring, then to go to Bree, then to go to Rivendell, and then ultimately to destroy the ring. And the best stories have a combination of temporary short-term goals and permanent long-term goals, with the short-term ones acting like stepping stones leading to that ultimate objective. All of these serve to keep the reader engaged and interested in the story as it unfolds. The second part of what it is to have a motivation is the reason. Why is the character doing what they're doing? What is it about them as a person that convinces them that reaching that goal is the correct thing to do? Reasons, unlike goals, tend to be more permanent because they're part of the makeup of who that person or character is. They can develop over time during the story. They can fade away, or new reasons can be added as things happen to the character on their journey. But generally, the reason behind the goal needs to be compelling and convincing and related to who that character is as a person. These are where the really interesting conflicts come into play. The reasoning between two different characters on very different courses who are maybe going against each other. It's the reasons that make that conflict compelling, and the reasons are really important behind creating a strong, motivated goal too. Strong goals and reasons are essential to creating a character that is both likable and relatable. By having convincing and compelling goals and reasons and overall a motivation, we can empathize with what they're doing. We should be able to understand why they're doing it and almost root for them to succeed, even if they're an antagonist within the story. And that's what creates really great conflict. Cersei Lannister and Ned Stark from the A Song of Ice and Fire series are a great example of this. Cersei wants to protect her children, which is something that we can all naturally understand, while Ned is searching for honor and truth, which is also something we are compelled to believe is the correct thing to do. And this sets up a really interesting conflict between the two characters. So getting a strong motivation based on strong goals and strong reasons is essential to hooking your reader in, investing them in the story, and building tension about what will happen as the journey unfolds. The first important point is that motivations need to be established early after a character's introduction. This isn't universal, and for mysterious characters, a lot of the fun can be in not knowing why they're doing the things they are. Similarly, for antagonists, we can reveal their motivations over time to build intrigue and a sense of investigation. But for our protagonists and any main characters that we regularly interact with, then their goals and motivations need to be established early on. This is crucial because we need to get the reader on board. We need to give them a sense of direction for the story, but also because a person's reasons for doing something is a key part of their character, and something we need to learn about what kind of person they are. The earlier we understand the stakes and the end point, the more we can understand why the character is doing or not doing certain things. This allows us to develop them further and build tension by having them move further or closer away from their goal. If we don't know why something is happening, or whether it's intended to happen at all, the reader doesn't know how to react and will default to simply not caring, which is the worst thing they can do. To explain how to write motivations, we need to split them between goals and reasons, because they are generally expressed differently, so let's start with the goals. By and large, goals occur in one of two ways in the story. They are either given to the character, or the character makes a decision to pursue them. Like in a video game, this is the difference between being given a quest by an NPC that lays out your objectives, parameters, locations, and all with the promise of some reward, while conversely, you could see bandits attacking a civilian and make the decision on your own to intervene based on your own understanding of what is correct or fun. In storytelling, these are largely the two ways goals are established with a character. If we look at these two quotes from Lord of the Rings, it gives us some great examples from Frodo. Dear Frodo, bad news has reached me here. I must go off at once. You had better leave Bag End soon, and get out of the Shire before the end of July at latest. I will return as soon as I can, and I will follow you, if I find that you are gone. Leave a message for me here. If you pass through Bree, you can trust the landlord, Butterbur. You may meet a friend of mine on the road, a man, lean, dark, tall, by some called Strider. He knows our business and will help you. Make for Rivendell. There I hope we can meet again. If I do not come, Elrond will advise you. Yours in haste, Gandalf. This is an example of Frodo being given multiple goals by Gandalf that spurs him further through his quest. Later in the story, Frodo must make his own goals. At last, with an effort he spoke, and wondered to hear his own words, as if some other will was using his small voice. I will take the ring, he said, though I do not know the way. Both of these examples show Frodo's goals, and importantly, they are spelled out clearly, so that we, the reader, know exactly what Frodo intends to do. That is the important writing point when it comes to goals. They need to be clear and easy to understand for the reader. Most of the time they are expressed through dialogue and conversation between characters, as this is the most natural, or through the internal thoughts of the character. The latter can be especially great if a character lies or doesn't want their true intentions known to other characters. As for the reasons behind doing something, this is slightly more complicated to write. But just like with goals, there are generally two ways to do this. The first is through direct voicing of those reasons, either through dialogue or thought. This is effective and simple, and clearly communicates parts of the personality to the reader and gives us a clear indication of their rationale. Using dialogue is a natural and concise way to show the reasons behind a character's motivation. Here is an example of that. They kept going, because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. In that sample, Sam clearly states the reason why they should continue their journey. In dialogue, it comes across naturally and is a good example of telling their reasons. Sometimes this is unavoidable. It would be very tricky to show that they are continuing because there's good in the world. So here, telling is a great choice. More than that, persuasion is another great way to use dialogue to show reason. If a character is successfully persuaded by another's arguments and agrees to undertake the task for them, then we, the reader, know exactly why they're doing so, or the character can state an alternative reason for accepting. Let's look at this clip from Rocky.
Rocky, do you believe that America is the land of opportunity?
Yeah.
Apollo Creed does. And he's going to prove it to the whole world by giving an unknown a shot at the title. And that unknown is you. He picked you, Rocky. Rocky, it's the chance of a lifetime. You can't pass it by. What do you say?
The second way to express a character's reasoning is simply through their actions. This is less clear, but can tell us a lot about their personality. After all, actions speak louder than words. If your character stands up to some bullies, we don't need them to tell us,
I don't like bullies.
because we can see through their act of defiance that they don't, and therefore we know the reason they're willing to fight. It can seem cool to have one-liners that state a reason, but in truth, most people don't speak like movie stars, and let their actions show their real character and internal motivations. This requires more assumptions on the part of the reader, but that makes the character more interesting and allows them to build their own personal image in their head. Here's an example from Reacher.
Look at this redwood motherfucker. What you want?
To give you a choice. See, you're in my house, Fatso, and you didn't ask permission. So you and your friends can leave now, or they can carry your fat ass out in a bucket.
There's no stated reason, but we understand Reacher's motivation in this scene. The trick is that this way of writing is more challenging, and different audiences could get different impressions, but in my opinion, that is part of the magic of reading and writing. If you focus on the actions of the characters, rather than having them spell everything out for the reader, you will create a more nuanced and natural character that your reader is more likely to connect with. So, I hope those tips on motivation are useful for you and help you create convincing, compelling, and motivated characters that will be relatable and understandable to your readers. If you've enjoyed today's video, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with your friends because it really helps the channel grow. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.